this is not something that is happening to me. This is something that I am happening with in time right now. You're listening to Inside Acting, a podcast dedicated to demystifying the inner and outer game of success in the entertainment industry. I'm Trevor Algott.
And I'm AJ Meyer, and in episode 261, we reflect on another year gone by, 2016, examining what worked, what didn't, why, and what's next. On this episode, we publicly celebrate our victories, learn from our stumbles, unpack lessons learned, and set our intentions for the year ahead. Stay with us.
Support for this episode of Inside Acting comes from Rehearsal Pro, the next version of Rehearsal, the essential app for actors, which is now available in the iTunes App Store. If you want to learn your lines, be off book for auditions, explore your character, make stronger choices, and do a whole bunch more, go to rehearsal.pro/IAP right now to learn all about the great new features available to you right now in this newest version of Rehearsal, the groundbreaking app designed by actors for actors. And P.S., you can now gift this app. Not now, you've always been able to gift this app, but now is a great time to gift this app to another actor in your life using an iPhone or iPad to learn their lines and book the office. That's rehearsal.pro/IAP.
All right, here we go. Back at it again with that review and renew.
This is it.
It's kind of, oh man. So is it just me, or is it like kind of scary to acknowledge the passage of time sometimes? Like, time is a beautiful thing, and I know that we're only here for like a little blip, but I don't, like, what happened? 2016 just like came and went. Well, it beat the crap out of us first, and then it... Oh man. So speaking of, our review documents are posted to the membership if you'd like to follow along and follow along with this episode more closely. It's like the bullet points or the outline.
Yeah. You know, sometimes these review episodes, I think they're so valuable. They're probably my favorite aspect of doing the podcast. Just the practice of being intentional and mindful about what it is we do in our lives and careers. But sometimes there's so much information that it can feel a little muddled just listening to it. It's kind of like, wait, where are we? What are we talking about? Who's talking? Whose issue was this? That kind of thing. So I highly recommend, if you're listening to this, and you're in a place where you can pull up the membership, you do that so you can follow along and you can see in print sort of where we're at with each other's reviews. So that said, AJ and I have each put together a pretty thorough document for ourselves that kind of just, goes through our years, talks about the sort of major sticking points and lessons learned and major victories. And we're just going to take this episode to really talk to each other about how the year went and ask each other questions and just let the discussion sort of go where it goes as far as, unpacking our years. So let's kick this off, man. I mean, I really want to start this by taking a look at the podcast itself and how the podcast did this breakdown. Year. So I took a little bit of time last night to jump into Podbean, who is the service we use to host our podcast, and take a look at some of the stats for the past year and compare them with the stats that I had easily available to me from the previous year, from 2015. So just taking a look at that, how did we do as a podcast by the numbers? And there's some pretty interesting stuff here. So we produced 42 episodes in 2016, which is 10 shy of one a week. So I know we took some time off here and there for various reasons, my car breaking down, and we had a few holidays and things like that in there. I don't know exactly how many episodes offhand we published in 2015, but I think it was about the same. So that's a pretty good clip, I'd say, for an indie podcast like us.
Yes.
As far as listener engagement, we had 168,483 downloads of our podcast episodes in 2016, which is an increase over 130,391 from 2015. So that's nice. Some nice growth there. And these are episodes that were downloaded. They were actually downloaded physically to somebody's device, not streamed.
That's over the entirety of the podcast, right? Not just the 2016 episodes?
That is just 2016. Yeah, so this year, just from January to now, we've had 168,000 plus downloads of our episodes. And in 2016, from January till now, as far as feed hits goes, this is the number of times that listeners actually accessed our feed to stream an episode, to download it, whatever. That number is creeping up close to 1 million. That was 807,609. And in 2015, that number was 741,864. So we're seeing some decent growth there. That is 70,000 almost more total feed hits this year than last year.
I'm taking all these numbers and dividing them by 42, the number of episodes that we did, and it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool to look at. I mean, I think we can finally comfortably say that we're upwards of 20,000 listeners. I mean, that's pretty amazing.
It's pretty cool, and it's cool to see, too, how it breaks down. I mean, 72% of our audience is in the U.S., but some of the countries that show up on that list of top 10 countries that listen to the show is pretty cool. Like, we've got a nice little listenership in, like, Finland and France, and the U.K. is a big one, Australia, India. It's really kind of cool to see where people are tuning in from. So, hi, guys. Thanks for listening. It is really fun to see that. Our top downloaded episode of all time, this was surprising to me. Not because I think it's like a surprising episode. It was just kind of like, oh, that's the one, is Kevin Sorbo, part 1. That is the top downloaded episode of all time, which makes sense given that Hercules was the top TV show in the world for several years there.
Yeah, I was going to say that probably gets a lot of international play, you were just mentioning the different countries that listen, so
yeah, so that makes sense. And then of our audience that are listening, that's a weird statement because everybody's listening if they're our audience. About 2/3 of them are listening on a mobile device, which I think is good information to know. 62% of listeners that are listening on their mobile device are listening via an iPhone. Which is kind of interesting. They can log into Podbean and see like who's listening via an iPad, an iPhone, who's using the built-in podcast app, who's using something else, things like that. It's really kind of fascinating to see how people are engaging with the content and tuning in. And then total mailing list subscribers. I kind of wish this number was bigger. 750 as of this recording. In 2015, I think we had crossed the 500 threshold or so. So it's slow growth on our mailing list, but it's really cool to see it growing and to know that people enjoy that. In fact, some of the reviews we've been seeing on iTunes, people are recommending other people subscribe to our mailing list, which is nice. Twitter followers is about 11,000. And Instagram followers is over 500. So big thanks to Timothy Patrick, who did many, many months of pro bono work for us, growing our social media presence. We miss you, Tim. Hope you're doing well, and thank you for your awesome service in pushing us over the top with Twitter followers, over 10,000, and getting our Instagram started, because we didn't have that a year ago. We didn't have our Instagram account. So some solid growth for the podcast, and I just want to wrap up this section by asking you guys, our listeners, what do you want from us? Like, what do you want the podcast to be doing or featuring or talking about that we're not right now? I mean, I would love to see this thing keep growing, and I want to hear your feedback. Good, bad, ugly, everything. Let us know. Do not be shy. Please write in, call us, whatever, and let us know what we could be doing more of, what we could be doing better, what we could be doing less of, that kind of thing. Would really love to hear your feedback so we can make this thing awesome. So that's the podcast this year. Pretty cool.
Thanks, man. Thanks for putting that together. That's really cool.
Yeah, it's kind of neat, and I'll make sure to include those numbers in the actual membership for anybody that wants to see. We've been sort of protective of those numbers in the past, but going forward, I see no reason to keep that private. I don't know if these numbers are good or bad or what a successful podcast looks like, but there they are. So let's talk about our individual years. And I want to start off by revisiting the word that we each chose for 2016. Your word, AJ, was abundance, and my word was music. So that was a word that we chose to help guide us moving through the year intentionally and maintaining the focus, a sort of anchor word. So I'll go ahead and start off by asking you, how did this word, abundance, manifest for you in 2016?
Well, I wrote out some of my thoughts on my review and renew document. And, as far as money goes, which is what we mostly think of when we think of abundance, that was actually pretty successful because, as I'll share later when we talk about wins and stuff, tons of debt, worked that down significantly, got to a place where, we feel comfortable. The credit card debt that we had incurred for moving across the country twice in as many years is not, I wouldn't say gone, but it's down to like a manageable, we don't feel like we're drowning in that anymore. But what I forgot about this word abundance is that not only is it a beingness, it applies in other areas besides the financial domain of one's life. Mm-hmm. Abundance can be applied to your relationship domain. It can be applied to career domain. It can be applied to health domain. Like any area of your life, you can apply this word, because the opposite word is scarcity. And scarcity, definitely, I think scarcity, or a scarcity mindset, is probably what led to some of the biggest breakdowns of my year. I wasn't presencing abundance. I wasn't being abundant in all areas of my life, and just allowed it to be applied to the one domain of finance, which was successful. There's some success to be celebrated there for sure.
Do you feel that the process of choosing a word like this to sort of guide you throughout the year, do you feel like this was effective?
I think it was for, say, the first half of the year. But as I'll talk about in some of the what didn't work later on, this is one of my big takeaways too from 2016, which is I feel like the part of the reason that you see very highly successful people have rituals and routine and habit in their life is because it allows them to be as bulletproof as possible, meaning that when something happens and their world is sort of shaken up for one reason or another, they can weather that storm a lot easier because they have these things in place. And there were some storms in the last 3-4 months of the year for me that I just frankly, admittedly, did not weather well at all. It goes to show how shaky those habits were that I had put in place, how vulnerable those routines were that I had in place. They didn't survive. And as a result, there was just breakdown after breakdown after breakdown. That's a big chunk to bite off when we're just talking about the word, because I have this sort of spread out throughout my review and renew document, but everything's connected, so it's hard not to move into these other areas in answering your question.
Sure. I had a similar experience coming to an understanding of how important habits are in weathering the difficult phases of life. Years and years ago, I went through a really tough time where I had a gnarly breakup with my girlfriend at the time. My stepmother was diagnosed with terminal cancer, and some career stuff was sort of falling apart, and I had a lot of self-doubt about my abilities when it comes to my chosen life path. And I was in therapy, and my therapist was so wonderful and frank about me really making an effort to define what my sort of pillars, my anchors were in life, those things that I could almost like hang on to so the storm didn't sweep me away. And it sounds exactly like what you're talking about. Like, how do you install those habits in your life that will keep you grounded and not swept up by the hurricane that can often ensue? So I guess my question here is why did these habits sort of fall away or crumble in this? Like, why were they not sturdy enough?
I don't know that I've had that revelation yet. I don't know that. I think I'm still exploring that. I am also in therapy, and one of the things that I will talk about later about what didn't work is not going sooner. I think it was a combination of things. I think that rituals and habits hadn't been in place for very long. So there's something to be said for urgency. I think that either they were not strong enough, or taking it from a point of view of being personally responsible, I wasn't willing to make myself a priority, I guess. There's probably a lot of a lack of self-worth tied up in that. I wasn't making it something that was uncompromisable. And then the last thing I was going to say is the external forces that ended up being the storm itself were huge, the biggest I'd ever experienced in my life, probably. Mm-hmm. We're talking about just shy of like people dying, really important, key people in my life passing away. That didn't happen, but it's like it might as well have for the impact that it had on me. So I think that's the common, and like I said, I'm trying not to. It's not about blaming those external forces. I get to be responsible for all of it, but in an effort to answer your question, I guess.
It can often feel like the world happens to us, and we just have to do our best to sort of parry and dance with the circumstances that exist, and that we're all sort of at the whim of external forces, and it can feel like that. I kind of think that's an illusion. I think that's a really convincing illusion, but the fact is that we all create the world. If you want to get really sort of new agey about it, matter is just condensed thought. I'm getting kind of, physical about it, like metaphysical about it, but really it comes down to whatever is happening in our lives are things that we have created by repeatedly thinking about and subconsciously setting our intention and doing the actions that bring those things about. Everything from like freak car accidents to disease to some people might even say natural disasters. And I think that you saying what you just said, which is, taking responsibility for it, is a really important thing. We've talked about this in the podcast many times, but I want to just bring this up again because when it hits so close to home, as it is right now in your life, and it feels like people have passed away, like it feels like a death. Owning that, this is not something that is happening to me. This is something that I am happening with in time right now. That's a powerful come from, and I think something that ultimately informs our art in the ways that nothing else can. So just wanted to drop that one in there. Yeah,
thanks for that. There's a lot more that could be said about it, but since we're on the word for 2016, I think that that was the most succinct way that I could kind of explain that.
Yeah.
And I'm also curious to hear what your experience was of you and your word for 2016, which was music, because I know that you had similar victories and pitfalls in the same, maybe not the same way, but regarding your word.
Yeah, this was the first year that I actually formally set a word that I can recall. Maybe I did it in years past, but I didn't have much conviction around it. But this year my word was music, and it was an anchor for me in that I sort of was a reminder, but the reminder felt a little more like a thorn in my side than an actual guiding principle. And I think part of that was because I was ambiguous about what the word actually meant. It for me, I remember saying that it actually meant both the act of making music and also kind of going with the flow or going with the song of life or something, like kind of artsy fartsy like that. So it wasn't specific enough, and I didn't have it tied to a specific goal. I had it tied to a sort of specific practice, which was spending at least 15 minutes a day playing my guitar or writing, music in some way. But again, it wasn't tied to a specific outcome. And I'm learning that that's really what I need. I am like a singular focus kind of guy. I'm so impressionable. I'm so like shiny object, squirrel, vulnerable, that I operate best when it's like clear, concise expectations with a deadline. So the word worked for me and didn't. It worked for me because I did finish, write, or compose or whatever. What's the word I'm looking for? I did my own version of Hurt by Nine Inch Nails, and I got that up on iTunes and Spotify and Amazon and Pandora and all that fun stuff, which was really pretty cool to see my name up there and have something out there that I feel proud of. And I also put together a handful of instrumental tracks and posted them up on SoundCloud, but it was nowhere near the output that I was sort of envisioning back in January. Yeah, going forward in 2017, we'll talk about this a little bit later, but my word for 2017, I feel really good about. It feels very close to home and something that is much more of a sort of direct path to the ways of being, which ultimately create our lives.
I want to just make a sort of mental note, because this is going to come up again huge for me later on when we talk about what's next. What you said about, I can't remember exactly how you put it, but like singularly focused or whatever. Like you have, shiny object syndrome and having a goal or having something to work for or having some kind of results that you're after are really, supportive for you. And I know that about myself, and yet I wasn't giving myself the gift of like having an actual thing to work for or work towards, which is so almost stupid. Like it's so like short-sighted to know that about oneself and then not say, yeah, let's put this, this goal, this whatever it is, some kind of, talisman out there that you're trying to get to, that you can, as you like to say, Trev, reverse engineer and break down those steps backwards so that how, the steps that you're going to take to get there. And so I'm giving myself that in 2017. I just wanted to kind of make a quick mental note of you saying that.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, old habits die hard, but also, earning our transformation, earning the next level of our own evolution is what makes it so sweet. So I'm with you on that, man. Thank you.
Yeah.
So let's. This episode's feeling a little bit sort of down right now to me. So let's talk about some of the victories.
Oh my God, it's so funny you said that, because I was just thinking the same thing. I was like, wait, Trev, but you had some wins. Let's talk about the victories from 2016. I think we both do. So yeah, let's jump into that and some happier times.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you've got some cool stuff. You booked. I don't know where that came from. You booked your first national TV spot. You went to Alaska. You got paid as an actor, of course. You had a nice meditation practice. I mean, tell us about what worked. Like, let's just do like a kind of point by point of the victories here this year.
Yeah, well, I already talked about paying down massive amounts of debt. You know what I didn't put on that list is I joined the union. I joined SAG-AFTRA, which was awesome.
Yeah.
Welcome to the club. And as a result of booking my first national television spot, which is, of course, a huge acting victory. And I got paid in smaller amounts, too, doing little shows here and there. But, just to show up to a place where, I get to work on my craft and I get to work with other actors and a director. In some cases they fed me, and then when I left, I got a check later for that. Speaking of beingness, well, I was being a paid actor. Like that's huge. All of that comes together to make for a at least decently successful year of being an actor.
Yeah.
Lots of auditions, lots of creating new relationships, and also just giving me some new ideas moving forward, which we'll talk about in the what's next. But just we talk about being specific and using a sniper rifle and and all of those things. And I think there are some things about my personality and my beingness and myself as an actor that I was not giving enough sort of weight and credence to. And I think those types of discoveries this year were actually big wins. And I'll talk about how I'm going to apply those moving forward in the what's next section. And then for, a short amount of time, about a month and a half, about 6 weeks or so, these habits and routines and stuff, they were actually functioning. I was using, Plant Nanny, and I was meditating every day, using, Habitica to do check-ins and like be urgent about the tasks that I was, completing. And this was all before what we're referring to now as the storm. So there was a large chunk of time, the routines, the habits, and everything was in place and functioning and effective, functioning well. Combined with some of the more tangibles that I just mentioned, I think is what all worked this year, and a lot to celebrate in that. I sent out my first actor newsletter. As you mentioned, I went to Alaska. We bought a car. We didn't have a car at the beginning of 2015 or 2016. So big chunks, big steps forward.
Yeah.
And excited to take that momentum into 2017.
Looking back at your year, there's so much that you did, and I have to acknowledge you for the balance that, from my perspective, you continually find in your career. I mean, you, within weeks or maybe a month of booking this your first national TV spot, you took a trip to Alaska. Like, that was such a nice sort of balance to, like, going all in, making something happen, doing the work, and then treating yourself to some sort of relax and recharge time. Even with the storm and all the things that we've talked about in the first part of this episode, there's a lot here to celebrate, and it looks like it was a really productive year from this perspective, from this vantage point,
Yeah. I think that's probably part of the reason you and I love doing these so much, is because, sometimes it doesn't feel like enough. It's like, oh, I wish I had accomplished X, Y, and Z, or like I didn't get this, or blah, and the stuff we were talking about in the first part of the episode, like, oh man, this is feeling kind of down. But then you list off all of the, things that you actually declared and delivered, dream, declare, deliver. Like, we declared these things and they actually came to pass. We go, oh.
Yeah, we do that as people, don't we? We really focus on what's not working. That's a thing that humans do, and there's so much to celebrate in every single moment of every single day. And yet we always seek out what's wrong, like a heat-seeking missile, and then we just meditate on that. It's funny how we do it, and I think there's merit to it. There's usefulness in that, but hey, look at all the stuff that is working. Yeah,
it is a pretty cool list.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to talk about yours too, because one of the things it's funny that you said, like, you have the shiny object syndrome and sometimes have a hard time focusing, because I always see you as declaring these huge things and then, like, just crushing them. So like your workouts, for instance, you hit your, 300 plus goal again. You were like, oh, well, I'm going to try out this vegan diet thing, and then just completely crush that. So, to me, from an outsider's perspective, as a best friend could be, like, I always admire, like, I'm like, damn, like you make these huge declarations and then crush them. So I'm looking through the list here. Your major declarations all pretty much, you crush them. Why don't you not only talk about that, but I guess what worked?
Yeah, well, my major declarations, I remember having two sort of main things that I really wanted to put to the test in 2016. And the first one was a vegan diet, and the second one was affirmations. All this, reading and talk I've experienced about, affirmations, auto-suggestion, as Napoleon Hill would call it. That being the sort of keystone habit to creating change in your life and attracting and creating the things you want. So the vegan diet was the first thing. And I got to say, man, I have a very insatiable brain. I just love to soak up information. It's as much of a curse as it is a blessing. So I've done a lot of research on plant-based diets. What are the pitfalls? What are the benefits? What are the things that people tend to sort of screw up when they try a plant-based diet? And why do people go on the internet and say that, they fainted on a train when they did a plant-based diet, and other people beat cancer 4 times in a row and then live to 120 years old in the best shape of their lives on a plant-based diet? Like, what's the difference? And we had this interview with Tessie Tracy where she talked about bio-individuality, and different bodies having different needs. And I think that's true to a point. I mean, I'm not certified anything, but I've done a lot. I'm really made myself a student of this stuff. And I do think that if you regularly subject your body to positive stress, to eustress, namely exercise, intense cardio sessions, weight-bearing exercises, and you do it on a regular basis. I'm talking like 3 to 6 times a week. That does wonders for your hormonal profile. Your hormones will sort of recalibrate themselves to be much closer to sort of what a normal, healthy human being would be. And I say that because there's so many toxins and junk foods and things in our lives that throw those hormones off on a regular basis. So I really think that the magic pill is exercise. And if you combine exercise with a well-researched and varied plant-based diet, you're not going to have all the problems that are out there that people are blogging about plant-based diets being inadequate to a human body's, needs. And I've been doing this for 14 months now, and I feel great. I don't feel necessarily better than I felt when I was not eating plant-based diet specifically, but I think that's because I was already eating so clean. But I've had no problem recovering from workouts, no problem building muscle, no problem with anything. In fact, if anything, I feel better than I ever thought I'd feel at 35 years old. And I'm definitely performing just fine. Like I don't feel like a 35-year-old man. And I see some of my friends who are in their mid-30s and I'm like, okay, I'm doing something right. Not to judge them, but just to see sort of what the norm is and to sort of objectively, or as objectively as possible, look at where I am. I feel good about what I'm doing. So long story short, vegan diet, huge success. I'm definitely committed to it for life for many other reasons other than just personal. But feeling good on that. So that one was put to the test, big win. Affirmations being put to the test. This is something that I learned a little bit later in the year, really just the past month or two. I've been doing more reading about this, and affirmations are great. Having your positive sayings every morning and every night. I think they're great. But what I'm learning is you can't just say the words. I mean, this sounds obvious, but you got to really put some feeling and some belief and some imagery and some emotion behind the affirmations. And that takes effort. You got to close your eyes and sort of feel and experience these things that you want as if they were actually in your life. And I'm learning that, and you guys know me, I'm just going to preface this by saying I'm pretty new agey. So, I apologize if this is a turnoff for you, but that's how we communicate as human beings with the universe, with infinite intelligence, with the cosmic mind. The cosmic mind doesn't care about the words that we say. It doesn't care about anything really other than what our emotions are. That's how we communicate with it and call things into our lives and also repel other things, is the emotions that we have. And the coolest thing is that we can control those emotions. We can summon them at will with practice by really tying them to affirmations. So affirmations are like the surface level thing. If you take each one and go deeper with it on a regular basis, I find that not only does that actually really feel good for it's just fun to do, to sort of imagine your ideal life and really experience it on an emotional level, but also in doing that, I'll talk for myself. It's almost always becomes obvious what the next action steps are. So it's one thing to sort of have fun laying on your bed, imagining the future, and it's another to actually get up and do something to bring that future into your reality. And the visualization practice that I've just adopted in the past couple months has really informed what those next actions are. It's almost always really obvious. Like, oh, okay, the first step to making this happen is I've got to go do this. And that's the coolest thing. So I would say that putting affirmations to the test this year, although they sort of bore fruit much later in the year than I thought, I'm definitely experiencing the power of them. So putting them to the test, also, check mark, success. So those were my two big tests for the year, and they both turned out great, and I'm excited to continue working with them. And as far as the other goals go, workouts, 315 as of this recording. Still got a week or so left in the year, so I'm going to keep going. And that's all on account of my morning ritual. I work out first thing in the morning pretty much every day, and these workouts were P90X2, P90X3, Body Beast. I did a little stint there where I was running for a while, and I decided I hated that. Been biking. I took some long walks to and from our place of work, which was fun. It takes me about an hour and 4 minutes to walk the 4 miles between here and the Douglas. And those are really nice. I count them as a workout because you do work up a sweat.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, what I didn't do was swim this year. I didn't get back in the pool with my team at all, but that's really something that I feel has been calling to me. So I'm going to make that a big goal for 2017. And then just a few other things. I read 33 books this year. I continued my everyday streak with meditation and journaling. I completed The Artist's Way. I really did intentionally practice the GTD productivity system. And another big win was I learned how to fast intermittently. So for those of you who aren't familiar, intermittent fasting is going without food for extended periods of time. And extended is obviously a subjective word. For some people, extended periods of time is 4 hours. Some people, extended periods of time are 10 days. For me, I've been doing the Eat, Stop, Eat protocol, which is basically once or twice a week going 20 to 24 hours with no food whatsoever. And at first, it was really difficult, but the body is built for survival. And my literally your cells get hardier. They become stronger, and I find now that that's another great way to sort of calibrate your hormones is to practice fasting once or twice a week. And for me, it's just as much of a spiritual practice as it is a physical one. So that was a big win this year as well. I really installed that in my life, and I feel great about. I look forward to the days where I don't eat, which is a ridiculous statement to hear come out of my mouth, but I really do.
I look forward to the days when I don't eat.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah. So in terms of a sort of productivity and personally productive and spiritual sort of experience of the year, it was a big success. My routines and rituals have really supported me. I love setting these goals and winning at them. That part of my life is on lock. I got that. So I'm looking forward to expanding on that next year.
Yeah. See, what a list, right?
Yeah.
you had an awesome year.
Yeah, it was good. There's always more I wish I could have done. I wish I had written more. I wish I had done more music. But from a maintenance standpoint, as far as my spirit and my heart and my brain and my body goes, I feel really good about the things I have in place. And I wish I had been more social. I wish I had taken more risks traveling and going out and spending the money to experience things. I played it pretty safe in those areas, but I see you highlighting the
well,
thing
I just
on my
wanted,
back.
I'm like, what is this? What is this thing here? Flipping the classroom. What does that mean?
So yeah, we can now move into what's next, I suppose, because this past year I finished leading another 12 months of the VO to Go-Go voiceover curriculum in Hollywood once a month. I really enjoy these, and I'm really, really excited for next year because next year, starting in January, David called me this week and he said, "Hey, we're going to be flipping the classroom." Essentially, what we're going to do is instead of people coming to the class and getting the presentation, like I have, PowerPoint slides that I go through, and I basically repeat the information that's already available online. If you're a VO to Go-Go Pro member, you can log in and have access to all the videos that he's put together with all the PowerPoints and all the supporting materials, and you can go through them at your own pace. In the live classes, I do that. I provide that same exact thing just in person, along with an on-mic workout and, coaching and feedback and question and answers. So flipping the classroom is basically removing the presentation part of those workshops. And so what we're going to be doing now is asking all students to review the videos online before they come to class. And then the class is going to be spending all the time going deeper with those concepts, answering questions, exploring them more deeply, and really getting on the mic and exploring those concepts in performance. So rather than people coming to class and getting the information for the first time there, they come to the class having already reviewed the information and asking questions. So the homework is to actually get all the info, and then you come to class to go deeper with it. I'm stoked for that, and that's going to be in January. So great time to jump in if you're thinking about it.
Epic. The rabbit hole when you Google this is pretty pretty deep, because it's all, tied in with the education around the world. It's
really cool to think we're starting to really understand how people learn. There's different modalities for absorbing information. Some people are, like we talked about, some people are oral learners, meaning they learn best through listening. Some people need to see it. Some people need to get their hands dirty and actually physically do it. And I think the neurological processes that happen when you learn new concepts are absolutely fascinating. And flipping the classroom is definitely a foray into how humans learn more effectively. And that's just a whole, fascination in itself.
I can't stop. This is like so much information. I'm like, what is happening?
Yeah. On that note, let's talk about what's next. Your word for next year is rebirth.
Yeah.
How is this? This a guiding principle for you?
The segue is not far off, because actually one of the things that I've been thinking about a lot lately is learning. I just have been thinking a lot lately about, people like you. I have another really good friend who's a perpetual student, and it's not just about the amount of reading that you do, which is always inspirational, but it's about a way in which we, as human beings, view life and our time here. Like there's a curiosity, there's a hunger for knowledge, there's a seeking of not necessarily answers, but maybe more questions. And I just feel like I have allowed myself to, in the 10 years since I've graduated from college, to allow that to slip away. And the way that I think, the way that my brain works is I crave structure. I need structure in order to accomplish things. I have a hard time self-regulating said structure. And so if I have a book, a class, a goal, a thing that supports me in making something happen, I will make it happen, and I will do it with some urgency and some excellency, but I will not necessarily create that structure to begin with. And so over the last several years, actually, I have tried different things to get myself to be a student with some success and a lot of failure. And so the word that I've chosen for 2017 is rebirth, because I can't help but feel like the only way that I'm going to be able to accomplish the really big goals of my life, to become that perpetual student, to break through some of the breakdowns of 2016, is to kind of blow everything up and start from a blank slate. From nothing we can create anything. I am in a mode right now of questioning so much about myself, who I be, how I operate in the world, where it all comes from, exploring, for instance, in therapy, like what were the sort of inciting factors to the person that I've become. And I want to just completely blow it up so that I can start from as blank a slate as possible and move into this renewed version of myself for 2017. So rebirth is about exploring the stories with which I've structured my life and essentially doing away with them altogether to create something completely new and new and improved. I'm starting to sound like a self infomercial, but yeah. And then all of my goals are for 2017 are with that in mind, that I crave structure and I want to completely blow up the person that I've been to create something brand new.
Wow, no small task. The complete reinvention of yourself as a person is enough to keep anybody busy for a lifetime. My question is, I mean, you've got some awesome goals here, some big rock goals, but what is your sort of practice or next step for actually going about manifesting your word, rebirth?
So the work has already begun. Dark Nights of the Soul is huge, and the paths that have already and will continue to come out of that book, the therapy. I am not only in one-on-one individual therapy, I am seeking some group therapy, couples therapy, continued reading, and also just an awareness. So meditation, getting back to meditation will be huge, because the awareness of like, oh, why do I do that thing? And it could be anything. Why do I speak the way that I speak? Why do I talk to people the way that I do? Why do I believe this certain thing about myself? What has me do anything that I do? And that awareness has been steadily growing over the last few weeks, and it's been really fascinating. So all of that combined is this sort of the breakdown. It's the continuation of the breakdown from the storm. I'm allowing myself to continue to break down before rebuilding, if that makes sense. So that's the sort of phase that I'm in right now in terms of rebirth. And then on the other side of that, my hope or my stand is that I will put these, for instance, these big rock goals, as you just called them, in place so that I have things to focus on. And my stand is that my ways of getting there will be different and riskier and not part of the same methodology that got me to where I am right now. In other words, as I'm moving towards these goals, I'm going to be acutely aware of, am I getting to these goals in the same way that I've gotten to like every other goal in my life? Or am I risking and trying, new things in order to get there?
Wow. Yeah. You baked my noodle a little bit just now when you said that you're allowing yourself to continue the breakdown, moving through it just mindfully and intentionally, and just being aware of the processes at work. That is awesome. That is definitely a revelation from, I mean, he doesn't use those exact words, but that's a revelation from Dark Nights of the Soul. Wow. Is rather than judging the breakdown and judging the sadness and thinking that life is all about being happy and then figuring out how to bust through the obstacles that keep you from being happy, as opposed to acknowledging those obstacles and those dark nights of the soul as being, learning opportunities and beautiful things in and of themselves. That's what that book is all about. And so that's where that revelation is coming from. It's like, I get to hold my feet to the fire and continue to experience the breakdowns that have been caused by this storm, so that I can continue to keep everything in question. Why do I do things the way that I do? And so as I move towards these goals, these what's next goals for 2017, that will be my focus. Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, it's time to put it on the line. Let's publicly declare these goals. I want to hear you say it. What are these big four big rock? And I'm using the term big rock. That's a Stephen Covey thing. In case anybody's wondering what the hell I'm talking about. So these big rock goals, let's hear it, man. Declare it.
Okay, so I broke it up into domains. So I have a big career goal, which is to get cast in the 2018 CBS Diversity Showcase. We can talk more about that in future episodes, but that is going to be the talisman that I put out there so that I have a goal to drive towards, and then I'll be reverse engineering that and all the aspects of how to get there and what's necessary, and how to reinvent myself or rebirth myself to get there. Number 2, my big creative goal is to finally complete the Artist Way. I'm excited to do it with our members, our membership, and not do it perfect. I've gotten very close several times, so I will be finishing it this time. Big personal goal is to create these routines, especially around health and fitness, that are sustainable. Frankly, I don't know what that looks like yet because I'm still allowing myself to be in the breakdowns. But I just know that whatever they are, they get to be so bulletproof so as to weather at least most storms. So creating whatever routines, however simple they are, and hopefully self-generated they are, to make sure that they stick. They have some stickiness. And number 4. My big spiritual goal, I'm calling it, is to return to my meditation practice and focus out. Like most humans, because of our evolutionary need for survival, I have a selfish streak, and I want to focus on turning that around and focusing it out, because I wouldn't call myself a selfish person. I just think I have a selfish streak, and I think returning to a meditation practice and focusing out will be huge for not only my awareness but also for the relationships that I have in my life and the quality of those relationships.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Commenting on that last point, meditation, I can't overstate how transformative meditation practice has been for me. I talked about this a few episodes ago, but the technique of familiarizing oneself with finding and living in the space between thoughts is quite possibly the most powerful thing I've ever learned in my life. And here's a case in point. I hear the leaf blower outside coming up pretty soon. I mean, it just stopped, but it was happening earlier, and I hate the sound of leaf blowers like you would not believe. I just can't stand the sound, and they come around like 6 times a week, and I'm like, wow, you're just blowing leaves around the alleyway, like you're not even doing anything. And they hang out for like a half hour, and I always find myself just sort of like getting all sort of uptight and angry about it. And what I've learned from a meditation practice is to simply note the response. Literally say, oh, okay, there is anger, there is frustration. And I just the act of labeling it all of a sudden removes me from the triggered experience of just of getting enrolled in that emotion and just going like, okay, I aware that I'm experiencing this. And all of a sudden it's something that's separate from you. You are not that response. You are not that emotion. You are not that thought. You are a person experiencing that, but knowing that you can pull away from that and just go like, oh, isn't that interesting? And just sort of watch it. It's not about detachment or anything sort of like unhealthy like that. It's just simply acknowledging what's happening and then choosing whether or not you want to continue intentionally with that experience. So hearing you talk about that, I think, is also a powerful way to inform and manifest your word, rebirth. Yeah. Are you going to use You going to use Headspace to meditate? Continue using that?
Yeah. I think I'm right now. I'm just contemplating whether or not I'm going to start over, because I completed what do they call it?
Yeah, like the starter pack. Yeah,
the starter pack. I completed that, and then I was partway through like I think I was doing the creativity one or something. And so I'm just contemplating, like, oh, should I start from the beginning of that second pack or start at the very beginning? So, yeah. But yes, I'll be using Headspace.
Cool. I fell off the wagon a while ago with Headspace. I stopped using it. And when I restarted, I actually did do that starter pack again. And I found that it was really supportive to just sort of reintroduce myself to some of the concepts that I had forgotten. So for what it's worth, you didn't ask, but I would invite you to start over with that.
I love it.
Yeah,
well,
it can't hurt, right? It can't hurt.
Yeah, no, not at all. So your word for 2017, I see some of your big rocks here. I love these. It's funny, you picked 4 as well. Your guiding word for 2017, and this is interesting, we've talked a lot about this, but your guiding word for 2017 is vulnerability. You want to talk about why you chose this word and some of the things it's going to help you, support you in accomplishing next year?
Yeah. And I realized this year that music was too ambiguous. I didn't back that up with a way of being. And so vulnerability, I realized, is what I was afraid of. That's what was stopping me. I was sweating like you wouldn't believe when I was hitting the publish button for that cover of Hurt that I did. And I realized it was just, I was so afraid of being vulnerable. I was so afraid of people seeing something that I had sunk a lot of my soul into, and so I realized vulnerability was the thing that was keeping me from doing that. And on a larger scale, vulnerability is what keeps me in my little, safety bubble most of the time. And so my guiding word for 2017 is vulnerability, and that encompasses everything, but specifically around music and writing and sharing and communicating and taking risks with travel, with being more social. It's really something that I look forward to embodying every single day. You can't make any progress in life without taking risk, without extending yourself and bearing the soft parts of yourself and saying like, all right, here it is, be gentle. Without that, nothing of substance really happens. And so that's my guiding word. And the way that I really want to embody that is when I use that word in an approach to my art, my creative work, especially when it comes to music, it feels really real, really present, and really potent. Like just like there's a fire there, there's a fire underneath that. So one of my big rocks is to write, record, produce, and release an EP or even an album of music. And I want to make that a singular focus this year. It's just something that will not go away in my life. And it doesn't need to be perfect. That's what I learned from The Artist's Way, from finishing that. It does not need to be perfect. It just needs to be true. It needs to be authentic. And that's all about vulnerability. And a way that I'm going to keep myself accountable to this is I have this weekly letter that I write that I know you read, AJ. I send it every Sunday. And I've just sort of reverted recently to a more honest, intimate sharing of my process and my thoughts and things like that, inner workings. And I want to share the process of making this piece of art over the next year through that letter primarily. I'm not going to be spending nearly as much time on social media this year. The book Deep Work that I talked about recently on the show had a really profound impact on me. And I realized that I could, go to my grave having satisfaction about some tweets and Facebook posts that I sent and feeling good about people liking them, or I could take that time and make art and something that feels true and real in the world, and making something that's really going to satisfy me in a much deeper level. I don't think anyone's going to be talking about my Facebook posts or tweets at my at my memorial service. They're going to be talking about what I did with my one wild and whatever that quote is from Mary Oliver, your one wild and crazy life, or something like that. Moving into 2017 with a lot of clarity in terms of how I spend my time, what I want to create, the substance that I want to experience in life. That's what my word and my life is going to be focused on moving forward.
Wow.
Yeah. So I've got some other big rocks that you can read in the membership on my document here, but that's it. So I want to, before we wrap up here, I want to ask you, AJ, what your one main recommendation, if you could boil all of your year down to one resource, whether it's a book or a documentary or a place to visit, whatever it is, if you could boil it down to one resource that you could impart to our listeners and invite them to check out for the opportunity to make a big difference in their life, what would that one resource, that one recommendation for 2016 be?
I mean, I know it's recent, and I know it's there's a lot of primacy, recency in this pick. But I really do feel like it encapsulates so much of not only my year, but some of my other picks. But Dark Nights of the Soul really actually encapsulates some of the stuff from Big Magic, including allowing yourself, oneself, myself, to express the darkness, the learning that comes from the darkness, the breakdowns of our lives through art, through some kind of art. And it talks about art in the way that Elizabeth Gilbert does in Big Magic. Art can look a lot of different ways. It doesn't have to be necessarily a poem or a song or acting or what have you. It can look a lot of different ways. So I'm gonna have to say Dark Nights of the Soul. I mean, I know I'm just reading it now, but I really do feel like it is indispensable. So that's my pick. You have one like it's like instead of pick of the week, it's like pick of the year.
Yeah, pick of the year, totally.
Pick of the year. What's your pick of the year, sir?
Yeah, I mean, if I could recommend one thing that people check out, the thing that if I went back and lived this year again and only had one resource upon which to sort of build my life, I'd have to say mine is also very recent too. That book, Deep Work. That book really got me to take a look at my life and ask myself the hard questions about what I'm creating. Am I being intentional and mindful, not only in my, creative time, but also in my professional life, but also my relationships with myself, relationships with other people. It really took me for a ride. And I would say if you're going to read one book this year, from the books that I've read, I would make it that one. So there's a lot that we didn't get to on each other's annual review documents. So again, I would invite you guys listening to check them out in the membership. Both AJ and I will post these in there, and you can read some of the finer details and see some of the goals and revelations and lessons learned that we didn't get to on this episode. And looking forward, of course, to seeing your guys' reviews if you choose to participate and share the same kind of thing. And I'm going to go ahead and make mine a shareable Google document as well as posting the text in the membership. So I invite your comments, your thoughts, your advice and suggestions and things like that. I invite all of that on my review. That does it for this episode. Yeah? Anything else?
No, man. I think that's it.
That was a big one, huh?
Yeah.
All right.
Well, hey, we try to collapse a year down into an hour or so. Like it's gonna be big.
Yeah. Well, hope you guys enjoyed it. Again, we are always open to your feedback, your thoughts, ways we can make this thing better. Let us know. Call us, email us, tweet at us, comment on the episode website, posts, whatever it is. Don't be shy. We're very open to that, and we won't take it personally. Promise. Unless, of course, you really, really like it, then we will absolutely take that personally. Today's episode of this podcast was produced and hosted by me and you, AJ. Jen Levin is our production coordinator. Gadala Gubrek is our marketing and web director. Deborah Smith is our community manager. And Fern Lim designed our logo.
You can sign up for our weekly email dispatch and listen to all of our episodes at our website, insideacting.net. You can also find us on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, SoundCloud, Stitcher, and iTunes. And if you do nothing else, as Trevor said, a favorable review on iTunes goes a long, long way, because it's kind of like putting a tip in our tip jar when it helps other people find the show.
Special thanks to our sponsors, Rehearsal Pro and VO2GoGo.com, the award-winning voiceover training system, and winner of Backstage's Reader's Choice Award 4 years in a row. You can get started with a free class online at vo2gogo.com/start, and you can also join me in Hollywood starting next month, January, to flip the classroom and really go deep with some of this stuff. So big thanks to those guys, and a big thanks to you, you listening. You guys can support the show with a financial contribution, a favorable review on iTunes, retweets, kind public words, and by subscribing to our newsletter. Just visit InsideActing.net to get started, and a big thank you to all of you who have supported and continue to support the show financially. You make this thing happen. Thank you very, very much for keeping us essentially employed in making a podcast and getting this thing out to you every week. And a equally big thank you to those of you who are considering supporting the podcast in the future. You can make a one-time, no strings attached, tax-deductible contribution via PayPal, Square, or Venmo. Just visit insideacting.net/contribute, or go ahead and sign up as a member. Make it automatic at $7 a month. And that'll get you access to our private member message board. It'll get you invites to exclusive events, fun freebies like t-shirts, special bonus content, and more. Just visit insideacting.net and click on the membership tab to explore that option.
That's it for episode 261, our 2016 review and renew for 2017 episode. Thank you all for listening, for your contributions, for your ears every week. We'll see you next week, and in the meantime, review and renew.